So now I would like our main presenter to introduce herself, and then we're going to have our question moderator introduce themselves. So take it away.
Thanks, Christy. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I'd like to reiterate, as Christy said, we typically do these in person, and we love working with parents. We love doing all we can to give you as much information relative to sending your students to Worcester State. So we hope we can accomplish a lot this evening and get most of your questions answered. Again, my name is Laura Murphy. I'm Associate Dean for Health and Wellness and Director of Counseling Services here on campus. Wear a couple of hats, and one of my responsibilities is working with parents and new student orientation, and working with Christy and Lindsay and her team to make sure we're doing all we can to support students transitioning to Worcester State.
All right, Linz?
Hi, my name is Lindsay Martinez. I am an Assistant Director in the Office of Student Involvement and Leadership Development. And today I will be supporting moderating questions and making sure all that you're wondering about gets answered.
All right, thank you. So as I mentioned, the first questions that we're going to shoot Lori's way are the ones that were asked when you registered. Some of you registered for these programs. And as I mentioned, then we'll move to the chat questions. So please feel free, if you have any questions that come up along the way or want some follow-up, please put them in the chat and we will get to those at the end of the first few questions that we have. Okay?
Christy, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Can I ask all of you, how many of you watched the video? I'm just curious, just so I know. Okay.
Good.
Okay, great. Thank you. That gives me a sense of information. Thank you. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, so the first question we have is, what is the best way to get connected with counseling services from the start? So right when students start school, what is their best way to get connected with your office?
So one of the things that we recommend for first-year students in particular is that if they know now or even later on in the summer that they're going to be utilizing counseling services, for example, if they have a provider in the community and they want to transfer to Worcester State, or they can keep their provider in the community and connect with us as well, and we will work with their provider. But if they know that they're going to be accessing counseling in the fall, we suggest that they connect with us right around July or August. They can email us. You see here right on the screen, there's our counseling center email address. And for now, that's the best way to contact us. And we will correspond directly with the student to set up the process for connecting with our office. If a student doesn't know whether or not they're going to need support, but just wants to know how to access us, should they need something, it's very simple. You can email us directly at that email address. Students can contact us via telephone. And if we are in person in the fall, they can certainly connect with us by scheduling an appointment, coming down to the office, and we can connect with them that way.
Okay, thank you.
We operate, sorry, Lindsay, very similarly to an outpatient clinic that's out in the community. So we work with students who may be in crisis and an emergency basis who need to be seen right away. We work with students who don't necessarily need that level of care, but need to schedule an appointment and need to be met with weekly. We'll meet with students every other week, monthly. Basically, at time of intake, at the first session, the counselor and the student will work collaboratively to decide what makes the most sense in terms of level of treatment.
All right. So our next question is, with all the uncertainty surrounding the fall semester and being on campus, there's a concern that students may not be fully engaged with the campus community. So what are the plans to fully engage incoming students?
So Chrissy, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit just about number one, starting with student orientation and maybe some of the things your department does early on.
Sure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about orientation at the end, but why don't I bring it up now? Because that is a great lead-in question. So typically, just like our parent program in person in May and June, we typically do first year orientation in person in June. So this year, we decided to move the orientation program for first year students to August. And we are looking at doing about 85% of it online, which we will be sending out information in the next week or two, or a couple weeks, excuse me, to your student via mail as well as email. So you may want to let them know to check, to keep an eye on the mail for that. So our program, whether it's in person or is really meant to connect students, first year students, with number one, their peers, number two, upperclassmen, number three, the rest of the campus community in relation to resources, faculty, services that we have on campus. So we, although we've moved it a couple of months, we are actually starting this year by putting a new Connect program that Lindsay's been working on as an online peer-to-peer introduction to Worcester State. And those will be going live in 2 weeks. So your student will also get an email about those. And that will lead into our online orientation. It's a 4-week, we're looking at a 4-week online program starting at the end of July into August. And hopefully ending with an in-person meeting on Monday, August 31st, depending on the COVID-19 restrictions and things like that. So it's a 3-pronged program this year. It's a little bit, it's even more than we usually do in just June. So it's actually a great comprehensive program. And that will connect the student immediately to campus and the resources as well as other students, which I think is super important to get them comfortable to come here. And I know it's, and Lori will probably talk about it, it's obviously a year like no other. So I think the program we've put together this year, I think, is really going to help acclimate the students even more so than our typical June program. We're looking forward to that coming up soon.
So, just to reinforce Christy's comments, I think if we're looking to, really get the student off on the right foot with connecting to campus and connecting to other students and being aware of who we are, what the resources are, and sort of the things that are here, that is really the best way to get the student engaged. Now we know, and this is, really, I mentioned this in the video, one of the things we know that can be really difficult for first year students is this whole idea of being their own best advocate, and really sort of letting us know when they're struggling. We know that's difficult. Letting us know when they're having a hard time or they're feeling alone. And so lots of times they do, they may sit for a month and they haven't connected and it feels like everybody else around them is connecting and making friends, when that really isn't the case. There's a lot of students that have difficulty. And we do have safety nets in place. The first one is orientation. The next one would be closer to when classes start. For our commuter students in Christy's office, they're offering programs all the time. This year will be no different. It may have a different format, but lots of different ways for students to be able to connect and engage. It's all there. They have to access it. They have to read email, they have to read social media, and they really have to be aware that these things are there. So we provide it all, and we want students to be able to engage in that. And if they're struggling, they can certainly reach out and let us know. For any of you on the call that have students who will be living or may be living on campus in the fall, the Office of Residence Life does a lot of outreach and a lot of work with first year students in connecting and engaging them to the campus community. There is a staff of roughly almost 40 RAs who work with our resident students at doing just that. They're the front lines, they're the resources. They're trained, many of us on this call work and train with the RAs, myself included, at being able to recognize and respond to students who may be having difficulty with some of these things. Additionally, our faculty members, we run out of the counseling center multiple trainings for our campus community for faculty and staff around recognizing and responding to students who may be struggling with either connecting or mental health needs. And so we have a lot of safety nets in place for these kinds of situations. But I will always say this, we can't read minds. And whenever possible, students really need to utilize their self-advocacy skills. And we work with them on this anytime we engage with them and anytime we work with them on really doing that. So if we have a student in the counseling center who says, I'm feeling lonely, everybody's connected but me, I don't know what to do, we may right away recommend, well, let's talk about getting involved. And we may try to connect them with student involvement and leadership development and sort of help them be the bridge for that. So that's pretty much, you know, how things work. But it's difficult for first year students. It's a new environment.
Okay, thank you, Lori. So our next question would be, what are plans to watch for student burnout if all of the classes are online?
So, you know, I think classes are online. One of the difficult things that we know is that obviously if the university makes the decision, we're going to do this all online. We know that those students that are going to have the most difficulty with that are the ones that haven't taken online classes before, and that's not their style of learning. And so what we need to do is, you know, that's where we rely on our faculty. That's where we want students to reach out to faculty and connect with them if they're struggling. Our faculty have been super supportive this past semester to students who have difficulty engaging with online classes. And again, who are trained by our department at working with students and then know to refer them and know to help sort of transfer them to the counseling center to work with them. And so again, that really boils down to our faculty being trained. We are doing more training over the summer with our faculty, especially around COVID-19 related stressors, and the online classes are one of them. But gauging on what went on this past semester with required online learning, our faculty were fantastic at handling those scenarios.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to move over to a couple of questions that were asked in the chat. The first one is, so just to confirm, do counselors make initial contact with incoming freshmen, or does the student need to make the first contact?
So the student needs to make that contact. You know, we don't know who needs counseling and who wants counseling unless the students, especially for first year students, because we don't have any connections with them. So students need to initiate that, and it needs to come directly from the student. Parents, this is very often one of the most difficult things. Is that this is something you can't do for them. And what you're going to learn quickly is that students need to be their own best advocate and reach out. So if a student sends us an email, again, the email address there, we will get right in touch with them and explain the process and connect with them. I will tell you, the sooner you gently nudge them to make these contacts, the better it's going to be for them come the fall. You're there with them now. You can support them in making that contact. You could be there with them, but you can't make the call for them. And those are the things that you need to work on with them for the summer. If there's one super important thing, it's that. And I think every department on campus will strongly recommend that parents really work with their students on this idea of self-advocating. Does that answer your question?
Thanks. I think that is great. So another question asks, can you talk about telehealth and if that is not an option for intake in fall counts, and if that is an option for intake, and talk more about fall counseling if it's not COVID safe for students to come to the setting?
So yes, we are working on that as we speak. We're working on all kinds of contingency plans. Obviously, we don't know. So if the university is open for in-person classes of some sort in some way, we will also more than likely be open for that. And we are working on protocols and safety for that now. I can tell you one of the things that would be absolutely required is students wearing a mask. That may be university-wide, don't know, don't quote me on that, but that would absolutely, in our environment, in our counseling center, be a requirement. 6 feet of distance would be a requirement. Pre-screening for coming down to the counseling center, so no one may be able to attend counseling without calling us first. And we're working on those kinds of things now. So we will definitely, if we are going to do any in-person counseling, there is a plan being worked on, and that plan will absolutely be in place prior to the start of classes. What we do know is that telehealth for some students is a barrier to them seeking support. So if we can, to the degree that it is safe, we will be seeing some students face-to-face in our department, following all the safety guidelines and protocols. For students who aren't comfortable coming in person and who are fine with telehealth, we will absolutely be utilizing the telehealth model that we use this entire spring semester. So we will more than likely be providing an option for students. A lot more to come on that, but we've got a good plan that we're really starting to think about and work toward as we draw closer university-wide to making those kinds of decisions.
Okay, thank you. So another question we have, and maybe our last question, unless anybody would like to add in some more, do incoming freshmen have assigned advisors? If so, are advisors different than a counselor?
Yes, so herein lies one of the major differences between high school and college. The counseling center does not operate like a guidance department. So those two departments are separate. So our counseling center is specifically for psychological counseling and mental health related. And then there is a separate academic advising department for first-year students called the Academic Success Center, which perhaps some of your students has already had contact with the Academic Success Center. So for first-year students, the Academic Success Center is really their primary resource, but they will also be given an academic advisor, which will more than likely be a faculty member connected to, if they have a major, connected to their major, or if they are undeclared, they will have an undeclared advisor who will more than likely be a member of the Academic Success Center. So yes, our departments are separate, unlike high school.
Okay. It looks like we have another one coming in. If the student has seen a counselor, either in school adjustment, either in school adjustment counselor or outside counseling, are there forms that a student can fill out that will allow your counseling center to connect with a previous counselor?
100%. We have release of information forms that a student can fill out once we've had a couple of initial counseling sessions to meet the student and talk about that. But yes, we work frequently, very frequently, collaboratively with our off-campus providers out in the community to work with the student.
Okay. It looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat at this time.
Anybody else have any questions? You know, I think it's important to mention that the university has been working tirelessly, and Lori will tell you too, to figure out plans for the fall in relation to COVID-19 in all aspects, residence life, commuter life, facilities. I'm on the committee that deals with facilities and how we're going to run the student center. For instance, at my office oversees the student center, academics. I mean, every aspect of the university is being looked at, and you know, will change according to what the governor says, according to what, you know, the federal government says. So we are really, I can't even tell you how hard we're working to really make sure that when your students arrive in late August, early September, that we're ready to go. It's mind-numbing to think about all the details of you know, all aspects of the university system, and how much thinking is going into what we're doing. So I think that's important to put out there, to have you rest assured that when they get here, they will be well taken care of, even if they're a commuter, if they're a resident. If we are going online again, if that's a thing that happens, that, as Lori said, the faculty were excellent, quickly turning it around last semester. So now we're even ahead of the game at that point. So it's a weird time for all of us, as we know, and it's even the same for us to figure out all the plans and to move forward. So I do want to just kind of take a little bit of the stress off, to not, you know, that we are working toward that. Lori's on COVID-19 calls like every day. And the mental health and the wellness piece is 3 times a day. It's so important. The transition piece is probably, in my opinion, and I would assume Lori's, the most important piece, up there with academics, of course, to your student being successful here. So I think that's something just to kind of point out. I don't know if you want to say anything, Lori, but
so one of the things I want to encourage you as parents, and have you also encourage your students, is that we know how anxiety provoking this may be. And what we don't want people to do is, you know, really sit there feeling so anxious that, you know, it's sort of interfering with people's summers, that it's always on your mind. And again, I think Christy did a great job giving you an idea of what we're doing. We are leaving no stone unturned with every nitty-gritty detail in terms of, if we are doing some things in person in the fall, that we are going to do it safely. And we have medical experts involved in this process as well. So please know that you can contact us at any time. And if we have an answer to your question, we're going to give you the answer. If not, we can do our best to sort of reassure you as best we can that we're on it. Or if we don't have the answer, we can look into it. But we really want your students to connect with us over the summer. And orientation. You know, it's always been important. Christy and I have been working on orientation, I don't know where we at, together 18 years now.
Yeah, 18 years.
Me a little bit longer than that. And if orientation was important before, it is even more important now, because it's really going to do a lot for students and for you as parents to feel okay about what's going to happen in the fall. So we want you to connect with us. Feel free to email us and you know, let us know if you've got concerns.
Yeah. We, my office too, you know, student involvement. So we work with programs, planning programs for your students, student organizations, leadership programming. In my office, in relation to transitions, the title of this Zoom call is really working hard to come up with alternate plans too, if we want to do virtual programming, and ways to encourage your student to still be active on campus, and not, if they're a resident, sit in their room, or if they're, you know, commuters, sit at home and not engage with other students. So that's basically our job, Lindsay and I. It's our job to get them engaged along with, you know, the rest of the campus. But we're really starting to think about that and alternate plans for that even now as well. So that's something that we started to do last semester, virtual programming, and we really kind of you know, moved it forward into even a bigger program. So another thing just kind of maybe take that anxiety away that they'll just be sitting in their room or something like that. That's not what, I mean, they might have to sit in their room, but they'll be engaging online in many different things we have as well. So just wanted to put that out there. Does anybody have any last minute questions they'd like to throw up before I just kind of wrap this up? Again, I see something. Is there
Yeah.
there?
So what just came in, it says, I think the experience of setting out on their own on campus is such an important part of school. Can you recommend a resource for navigating that path if students are home in the fall?
That would literally be taking advantage of all the online programming that we'll be doing. So, you know, let me just give you an example. One of the things that we do out of the counseling center is, you know, we do a lot of outreach work with students. We also have some student leaders that we work with, and we run various training programs on mental health, and we have a group called Student Support Network that we offer twice each semester. And so if we can't do that in person, we are going to be offering that as a programming option via Zoom, like we're doing now, as an opportunity to engage students and provide them with information and connect with them. So that's pretty much, you know, the best thing to do is, again, pay attention to the social media, pay attention to the information that Christy puts out of her office.
If I could just add to that, social media will be a really huge way that students will be engaging with our clubs and our offices. I know in our office, as Christy says, the Office of Student Involvement, we're working to make sure our student leaders are aware of what they can do with social media to better engage your students who are already on it and already using it frequently. So just something to throw in there to kind of help with that as well.
Great.
Just as an aside, I mean, you know what's really ironic about all of this is that in our department, long before COVID-19, in March, our department was just about to launch a social media campaign through our university marketing department about being on social media too much and the impact that has on students' anxiety and isolation and all of those consequences that sometimes comes with social media. Now we can't function without it.
It is ironic.
Yeah. It really is ironic, but now we want them to pay attention and utilize those positive, helpful social media resources as a means of connection.
We just got a question come in related to social media. It says, kids don't use Facebook, and that's the only group that I've seen so far. Is there another social media platform?
So counseling, we have a Snapchat. We're using that account, and we will send out various programming things around that. So, you know, students may see some of that coming from our office. Once we get a list of all the first year students and everybody's in and registered, that stuff may be coming out as well.
Do you have an Instagram too? Yeah, and ours is pretty active student involvement, and the Worcester State has their own Instagram. I think more students at this wrong, Linz, but I think more students at this point use Instagram to follow offices, probably more. So, you know, I would suggest even you all can follow it too. I see Alicia asked a question next, not that I'm jumping on the bandwagon of Lindsay here, but a Facebook group or a way to follow on social media. Any parents can follow too, just to see what's going on. I encourage it. That way, you know what's happening on campus. You can nudge your student. Hey, did you check out this? They'll probably, you know, not answer your phone call or text anymore. But I'm just kidding. But I think I think it's great to get involved in that. Not to jump over Lindsay, but don't have a Facebook group for parents in particular, but that could be something that might be interesting to look into. But again, you could always follow our social media. Yeah, it's hard to, we're a different beast in our office than counseling. Counseling can't share specific student information. you know, we don't have some of that in this office, so it's important, I think, to just kind of keep an eye on what the type of events that we have, and that's easy for you to kind of still watch, and you can even call and ask us about events. So it's a little different. So we're happy to answer any questions about that. Any other questions? This is great. Look at this. This is our second Zoom call. I see Alicia's on this one. She was on yesterday's for academic affairs. So I appreciate her coming back. There's a lot of you now. This is great. So I was happy to have a group on and have some great questions. That's great. Look at Alicia's like, it's not just me. I know. Great job.
Has anybody talked about the difference between FERPA and then other types of confidentiality that exist on campus? Did you guys do that?
So the FERPA was in with the academic overview. If you want to talk briefly about the FERPA piece, and you can talk about it in relation to yours, that's fine. Up to you. I think he covered most of it, but if you want to do like a 30-second spiel, that's fine.
I'm sure a lot of you may be aware that, so, you know, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act is basically, it's hard because what it does is it gives students the opportunity, if they choose, to allow parents to be able to have access to their grades, to be able to be included in financial aid information, registrar's information, but a student, because they're 18 years of age, will need to give you permission and sign a waiver form through the registrar's office to be able to do that. That is different from the counseling center, who follows the American Psychological Association, and we are bound by client counselor confidentiality regulations, in which case a student would need to sign a different release of information for us to talk to you and involve you in any of their counseling sessions or to access any information from us. So those are two different things. Student conduct has a different release of information. So again, there's some very different laws that sort of govern what we can do and what we can't do. So I think that's important for you all to know. Any questions about that?
Anything at all? Okay.